Hello and welcome to a new episode of That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. My name is Françoise, and today we're tackling a topic that many women struggling to conceive have likely heard. We're going to be talking about that sentence, just relax and it will happen. And for those of you who have been on this journey, you know that these words, they're often well-meaning, but they can feel frustrating, even hurtful. Um, we probably all know that stress has an impact on our fertility, but it can feel like that need to relax just becomes another to do on the long list of things you feel you need to do to get pregnant. And how do you relax when you want something so badly? It seems impossible. And I've been discussing this a bit on Instagram, also asked people, and you all said yes if you wanted to know more about sort of the historical roots of our inability to relax and surrender. And you overwhelmingly said yes. So today we're going to explore why this advice, just relax and it will happen, is not only difficult to follow, but also really rooted in deeper historical and societal shifts that have just made it really challenging for women in particular to truly embrace rest and relaxation, although the same also really applies to men as well. So today I'll give you a little bit of a historical context, how, we've shifted with our religious thinking about the nature of life to a society that's all about achieving, about working really hard. Then I just read a great book on rest. It's called Sacred Rest. So I'll also talk a little bit about that because it gives some really good advice on the different types of rest that you can focus on, just putting in your on your schedule. What true relaxation really looks like, because as I did, and maybe many of you do so too, it's not that you need to do nothing. There's actually different things that you can do to create that feeling of rest, relaxation. At the end of the episode, I also tell you a little bit about my upcoming program, Nourished, which are 10 guided practices that help you activate that state of relaxation, of surrender within yourself. If you want to take a sneak peek straight away, you can find out more at thatfertilefeeling.com/nourished. But let's start with that historical context. So to understand why it's so difficult to simply relax when trying to conceive, we actually need to take a look at the significant shifts in religious and societal values that happened over thousands of years ago. These shifts have really influenced how women view rest, surrender, and their bodies. So when we look at ancient times, many societies revered the goddess. So there was sort of a divine embodiment of the feminine. The goddess was seen as the creator of life. She was intimately connected to nature, to fertility, to the cycles of the earth. So in these cultures, rest and surrender were not just feminine qualities, they were sacred acts. Just as nature has a period of rest and follow, winter, people adopted those periods as well because it was seen as a natural part of the cycle of the earth and of life. In ancient civilizations, there were entire temples dedicated to the goddess, and those temples were central to the community. So those were spaces where life's natural cycles were honored, including the cycles of fertility and rest. Sexuality, too, was considered sacred. That was the life-giving energy, right? So the act of conception was really intertwined with spiritual practices. People actually had sex in temples. I may have mentioned this before on the podcast because there was a spiritual practice that respected and celebrated that divine goddess energy. However, as history progressed, patriarchal religions appeared, like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and these became, as you know, the dominant religions. So what we see happening is that these religions, they represented a shift in focus from this nurturing, life-giving goddess to a singular male god who represented control, power, and productivity. I won't go into all of the societal shifts that were happening at the time, but this coincides with a period in which society also became much more centralized, much more hierarchical. So, yeah, you see those shifts happening at the same time, and religion became a tool to control those more centralized societies. So this shift also devalued the feminine qualities of rest, surrender, and being in tune with nature. I think what you basically start to see here is a shift from the highest good being sort of a state of being that you can attain within yourself, to the highest good being something that needs to be earned or achieved with good behavior, living diligently. It's a really different way of looking at life. And as these patriarchal values took hold, the idea of rest, especially for women, became associated with passivity and inferiority. These qualities that were once celebrated in that goddess-centered worship were now seen as a weakness. And women's bodies were thought, previously were thought as sort of that giving access to divine sources of life, of nourishment. They were increasingly viewed through the lens of control and productivity. So there's this historical shift that plays a really big role in how women today perceive rest, relaxation, surrender, particularly when faced, with the stress of trying to conceive. Because our cultural narrative has long been one that emphasizes doing over being, control over surrender. So when someone says, just relax, it's not just about being able to relax in a moment. It's actually about overcoming centuries of conditioning that tell us that our worth is tied to our ability to do and to achieve. Now, what you see happening as these patriarchal values became dominant, women were gradually pushed out of their roles of spiritual and societal authority as well. That's another reason why, we've lost our connection to those practices of rest and surrender. In the ancient goddess worshipping cultures, women often held significant power. So there were priestesses, healers, leaders. But as these patriarchal religions took over, these roles were either eliminated or taken over by men, so leaving women with fewer avenues to express and embody their feminine qualities. And this shift also had profound implications for women's everyday lives, as women were increasingly defined by their relationships to men, as daughters, as wives, as mothers. Their value became tied to their ability to fulfill these roles, and the idea of rest, especially the right to rest and simply be, that became a luxury that many women felt they couldn't afford. Not to say, that ancient women didn't work or didn't have any activities. It's just a fundamentally different way of looking at life. What we've come to expect as women is that we need to be constantly active, that we always need to be giving, that we cannot, go to temple and worship our inner power. We always need to be there, with little regard for our own needs. And then another thing that I wanted to mention when it comes to these changes in our religious traditions is that there's also a narrative, a cultural narrative, about women as being either passive or dangerous that also reinforce the idea that women need to be controlled. So if we look, for example, to the story of Eve from the Bible, her act of eating the forbidden fruit is seen as the original sin that brings suffering to all of humanity. So this narrative has been used to justify the subordination of women, the suppression of their voices. You can see women, like the religious role of women at the start of, I think it was around 300 AD, you see the role of women in the spiritual role of women really being sort of erased from the Bible. These effects, have had, or these narratives have had lasting effects on how women view themselves and their bodies. This emphasis on control has led to a culture that really prioritizes domination over collaboration, productivity over rest, intellect over intuition. So as a result, many women today struggle to embrace those feminine qualities of rest, of intuition, of connection to the earth, especially when faced with the stress and pressure of things like trying to conceive. So the impact of these shifts really cannot be overstated. I mean, they've shaped not only how we, are perceived by others, but also how we perceive ourselves as women. And this historical context, I feel, really shows us why it's so difficult for women today to simply relax and let go, especially when they're trying to conceive. So I think this explains a little bit why rest is so difficult to embrace. But it's also that we don't really know what rest is, true rest, because we've lost that sort of connection between the state of being and divinity. And that's what I really liked about a book I recently read, Sacred Rest by Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith. She does a really good job at showing that rest or relaxation doesn't mean doing nothing, but that it's about finding your way back to a life that's filled with nourishment and replenishment. Like, as I'm saying this, I feel like it's almost like she's trying to point our way back to just living life as a sacred act where you don't go through the motions, but you realize that every day matters, and you don't want like your subconscious programming to bring down your quality of life, and you create these really active, or you make really active choices on what you want to feel like and how you want to go about your day. So she helps. I think her work is really good at showing that there's 7 different areas in your life that you can look at when it comes to rest. So there's physical rest, mental rest, emotional rest, spiritual rest, social, sensory, and creative. And each of these types of rest, they address different needs within us, and together they form really a holistic approach to reclaiming rest as an essential part of our lives. So I'll briefly touch on all of these different areas. First, there's physical rest. So obviously that might be the most obvious form of rest, but it's often misunderstood. So physical rest, you may think about, sleep. And of course, getting sleep is crucial, but as she mentions in the book, good sleep actually depends on you being well rested. Because if you're not well rested, you will take that unrest with you into your night, and it affects your sleep. So physical rest, it really is about including activities that help our bodies recover, such as stretching, yoga, or just simply sitting in stillness. Something that's been coming up on the podcast is that if you're trying to conceive, like only doing high intensity workouts, maybe not the best thing, because that puts so much stress on your body. So when it comes to physical rest, it's really about feeling what your body needs in terms of relaxation. Where are you holding tension? How can you start working with the body to relieve that tension or release it? Um, that's a really great way of entering into a state of relaxation that also supports your reproductive health. Make sure that you're just not hormonally, you're not running on empty. But that can be challenging. Eh? I told you about all of this societal and historical context. So giving yourself permission to not live up to that ideal of the woman who's, working 9 to 8, let's say, and then goes to the gym and has a great body and eats healthily. Finding a way to bring some, maybe lose a bit of shape, it can be really hard. But it's important that you start communing with your body and really feeling like, how can I give my body the rest that it needs. Um, 2 other areas, mental and emotional rest. So those are equally important, especially in a work that constantly demands our attention and our emotional labor. So mental rest, it involves taking breaks from the relentless input of information, whether it's through meditation, spending time in nature, engaging in activities that calm the mind. And I find that a really good way for me is just, at the end of the day, to see, do I feel drained by all the work that I did? Do I now really need some mental space to recover? Or, can I just easily move into my evening program? Am I still charged? I think that's where you can really find the effects of that mental exhaustion or rest. Emotional rest is about allowing ourselves to express our true feelings and to be in environments where we don't have to perform or put on a brave face. We're online a lot, and I know there's a lot of spaces where you can share about, your how you're doing when it comes to your fertility journey, but make sure you have safe spaces. And also know that connecting, like not just sitting behind the screen, but really connecting to other women, that can really provide you with emotional rest. So it may seem like emotional rest, like, do I need to engage with my emotions? Yes, that's actually where you find that emotional rest. When you stop suppressing everything that you're feeling, when you're creating a safe outlet. And this is really an important thing that I've mentioned on the podcast before. Like, I feel everyone needs a place where they can practice emotional honesty on their fertility journey. So a space where you can be authentic, where you can connect with others, where you can share your deepest truths about your fertility journey without fear or judgment. And for me, like one of the things I do is organize these ceremonies, lost ceremonies for women who've lost a baby. And it's always difficult, but no one wants to come to an event center on a Sunday to talk about the baby they lost. And but I always say, like, when women leave, they're so much lighter because they found that emotional rest. It's not about doing something dark, it's actually about creating a softness and a connection to love in in all of those difficult things that you've gone through. Then there's spiritual rest. And that happens when we're deeply connected with our sense of purpose and our connection to the divine. This can be really difficult, when you feel like you might never become a mother. This whole idea of purpose can come into question. So when it comes to spiritual rest, this is really where you align with the feminine quality of surrender. It's about letting go of control, trusting in something greater than ourselves, finding peace in that trust. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to find a god or a religion. It's just about knowing that you're not in control of life and practicing being with that. I think that's the exercise I always give. Just go to that feeling that this might never work for you. Sit with that. Sit with how devastating that is and then not being in control. And then, ask a higher power for support. And that can be a god, a goddess. It can be your intuition, your higher self. You can also just start meditating on connecting with your heart and finding the divine within you, the one who truly knows what is right for you. And ask that love within you for, yeah, to guide you through life, through this journey, show you the right way. So it's not you and your mind that have to come up with all the answers, but that you know that you're being guided by a deeper power, higher power, or something deeper within you. Then there's sensory rest. That just means reducing the sensory overload that we experience in our daily lives. So it can mean turning off screens, spending time in silence, being in nature. It's all about allowing our senses to recover from the constant stimulation they endure. And one thing you could do again at the end of your day is just, okay, tune into your sense of hearing, your sense of smell, your sense of touch, your sight, and just see, are any of these senses overloaded? And that's where you want to create a little bit of rest. Um, you know, this allows us to reconnect with our bodies, with the present moment, rather than being constantly pulled in different directions. So yeah, just making sure you have a couple of, well, I wouldn't say hours, but let's say a couple of minutes every day where you can create that space to really disconnect and unwind from a sensory perspective is really important. And finally, and this is my favorite one, creative rest. And this is not about doing nothing. This is about reawakening the sense of wonder and awe within us. It's about taking time to appreciate beauty, whether it's in nature, in art, or music, because that creative rest really allows us to tap into our inner child, to dream, and to create without the pressure of productivity. One thing I started doing recently is just visiting museums, for example, because that's where I find my inspiration. Nature is also a really good one for me. So this looks different for everyone. But just feel if there's a way in which you can get inspired about life again, and wonder about what brought us. I just went to an exhibition about black holes and just, wow, we're on this in this universe that doesn't make sense at all. And yeah, so for me, that was really inspiring. So creative rest is a way to, reconnect with that deeper side of you that's been suppressed by the demands of daily life. It's a way to really nourish your soul and to find joy in the simple act of being. So those are the different areas. And I hope it's clear now that when I'm talking about rest or relaxation, I'm not talking about taking a nap or having a spa day. Those are, I took a couple of spa days recently as well. So I know they can be important too, but rest is so much more relaxation. It's about a holistic approach to rest that really honors all aspects of your being. So it's about embracing the feminine qualities of receptivity, surrender, presence. It's about allowing yourself to be nourished rather than always giving. And it's not a one size fits all concept. So it's deeply personal. It can take many forms depending on what we need at any given moment. But I think it's a journey. It's something that you can start playing with and really start tuning into your body, yourself much more and see what would make me feel really nourished right now. Where do I feel depleted and what would make me feel really nourished? So, how do we begin to reclaim rest and surrender in our lives? Like, how do we move from understanding these concepts to actually living them? First, I think what's really important, and you may know this, right? If you're trying to conceive, you might actually feel that relaxation is actually essential for healing, not just for your body, but for your mind and your spirit as well. It's just that you don't know how, right? Um, so rest is a way of saying yes to yourself and no to the demands that drain you. It's about creating boundaries that protect your time and energy and really allowing yourself to step back from the hustle and bustle and reconnect with what truly matters, especially when you're on a fertility journey. You want to be nourished. You want to feel that life is vibrant, even though things are difficult, there's things that energize you, that bring you joy, that bring you inspiration and all. So, some practical steps to begin reclaiming rest and surrender in your life are first to create sacred spaces for rest. Make it really tangible. So, designate a space in your home or a routine that is solely for rest. It could be a corner with a comfortable chair, a place in nature, even just a regular time in your day where you disconnect from all distractions. And this is then the space that you use to engage in activities that bring you peace. So they can be meditation, journaling, or simply sitting in silence. But make that like non-negotiable and make that sacred so that you also feel when you're doing this, like I'm not completing a chore or something on my to-do list. I'm actually engaging in a sacred practice. I already mentioned this, but the second thing you can do is really listen to your body. So pay attention to the signals that your body is sending you. Are you tired? Are you stressed, overwhelmed? And this is it's so easy and it's so hard at the same time. Once you start doing it, it becomes easy. Instead of pushing through these feelings, honor them. So give yourself permission to rest when your body asks for it. So that might mean taking a nap, stepping outside for fresh air, enjoying a leisurely bath. I said it's difficult. I just had to do this for myself. I've been behind a computer all day long. I wanted to record this podcast and I felt that my hips just wanted to move because I've been sitting. I know that this is what my hormones need. There was an inner voice that told me, no, to-do list, you have to go downstairs after, at 6:30. Oh, you don't have a lot of time. So I was sort of overriding what my body was telling me. So that became my practice. I put on music and I danced with the fact that I didn't want to dance. And once I got through that, that's where I found my surrender. And that's where I then felt flow. And now I'm still recording this podcast. So there was some time. Like all of those stories you tell yourself, they're usually not true. So listen to your body. Number 3, incorporate rituals of surrender. Um, I already talked a little bit about this, but rituals can be really powerful tools for embodying surrender. So you can consider creating a daily or weekly ritual that allows you to let go of control and trust in something greater. So it could be just lighting a candle and setting an intention for the day, or attend a full moon ceremony. I host these on Insight Timer on every new moon and full moon. You can find me. I think I'm Francoise Molenaar over there. Just join a full moon ceremony where you get to reconnect with the cycles of nature. Just feel that you're part of something bigger. Step number 4, practice saying no. One of the biggest obstacles to rest is the inability to say no. So practice setting boundaries that protect your time and energy. And remember that by saying no to others, you're saying yes to yourself and your well-being. So this is where you can stop giving, especially when you're on a fertility journey. Right now, it can be all about you. You have permission to say no. You have permission um, to not be there for everyone. You have permission to put yourself first. And then final point, cultivate communities of rest. So really surround yourself with people who value rest and who can support you in your journey, whether it's a book club, meditation group, just a few close friends, find a community where you can share your experiences and really encourage each other to prioritize rest. Maybe share this podcast episode with other women and say, like, do you also feel that call to return to the ancient ways where we honored ourselves, our bodies, our rest, just our being, how we are divine beings? And we should put that more central in our lives. Because by embracing these practices, we can really reclaim the feminine quality of rest in our lives. This isn't just about, our individual well-being. It's about challenging the cultural norms that have devalued rest and surrender for centuries, that are destroying our environments, because the way we treat ourselves is also, the way in which we treat the planet. So rest is not a luxury, it's a necessity. We need to find a way back to balance. It's essential for our health, our creativity, our connection to the divine. It's an act of resistance against a culture that demands constant productivity and perfection. It's about reclaiming our right to just be without having to prove our worth through what we do. It's just a deeply spiritual process. It's about returning to love, returning to the heart and finding peace in simply being. So, if you could use some help with that, I mentioned this at the start. I just created an online, it's not even a program. I recorded 10 practices, 10 guided visualizations, meditations that help you really nourish yourself at a physical level, at the level of the heart, and at your soul level. So those are the three areas where I focus on. There's one guided practice that sort of helps you tune into your intuition, see where you need to feel more nourished in your life. Then there are three practices that help you connect to the body, really feel how you can nourish your nervous system, your womb. Forgot the third one. Then there's practices to help you open your heart to conception, to life. And then there's practices that help you connect to the soul, so to like a higher power, to spirit babies. Again, I forgot the last one, your higher self, maybe. So always to approach conception and getting pregnant from a place of fullness, of feeling nourished, of not wanting to be in control, but opening yourself up, inviting a pregnancy in. So if that's something that sounds like you could do with, you want to really connect to that feeling of nourishment, create a template for rest, for the divine rest in your life, you can head over to thatfertilefeeling.com/nourished. There's a wait list now. You can sign up. It won't be super expensive. I'm thinking something like 37 euros for the 10 practices. So money shouldn't be an obstacle here. And I hope this episode inspired you. I brought together, 5 or 6 or 7 different books I've read, on these historical shifts, on rest, on religions. So yeah, it was great bringing all of that together. I hope you enjoyed it. Always good to hear from you. So let me know what you think. Send me maybe an email at francoise@thatfertilefeeling.com, or a comment or a DM on Instagram at thatfertilefeeling. I always love to hear from you, and I always get back to you, and hope to see you back next week. Bye bye.